So my name is Casey Green. I am the Campus Computing Project. We are the largest continuing study of IT in American higher education. Today's panel, or this hour, is titled From Dewey to Digital. Before I go into the panel, I want to recalibrate the audience a little bit for our panel members. We've had a lot of churn in the population of folks in the seats and in the back of the room who are talking very loudly, folks in the back corner. I used to be a classroom teacher. What are you going to do? So just to sort of recalibrate for the audience, how many of you have a primarily academic affiliation? It's about as it was this morning. How many of you are with the provider community, which is a much softer way of saying vendors? You bring content, technology, stuff to education. How many of you thought there was going to be swag here this late in the afternoon? Good luck to you with that. All right. Good luck to you with that. So, again, our title today is From Dewey to Digital. Let's see if I can work the computer. My name's Casey Green with the Campus Computing Project. Our panelists today, and I'm not going to do long introductions, they're in the back of the book. Sean Devine, who is the Executive Officer of CourseSmart, which is a consortium to bring course materials. And he'll talk with, each of the panelists will have a moment to tell you a little bit about who they are and what they do. Felice Noodleman is the Executive Director for Education at the New York Times Company. Bill Reeders is the Executive Vice President for New Media at Cengage Learning. Jack Kang is the Director of Application Processor Business, of the Application Processor Business, at Marvell Semiconductor. So Jack, I'm going to begin with you. You each get about 30 to 40 seconds just to sort of give us a way of anchoring us. The model here, folks, is the one that none of us ever learn in graduate school and we use all the time in real life, and that is the blind guys touching the elephant. We never had a methodology course on that when we were in graduate school, and yet that's, for a lot of the research many of us do, whether we try to publish or we're just doing informal stuff, that's in fact what we do. We're sort of all blind folks touching different parts of the elephant, looking for the gestalt, and that's really the model and methodology for today's panel. So Jack, I'm going to give you your first 30 seconds.
All right, thank you, Casey. So my name is Jack Kang. I'm from Marvell Semiconductor. For those of you who have not heard of Marvell, we are one of the largest semiconductor companies in the world. The application processors that we build power your Blackberries, they're in your Xbox. We build Wi-Fi that goes in your PSP. We power your printers, your hard disk drives. A lot of consumer electronic high-tech gadgets, right? So my business is to sell to these tier 1 companies that are all here at CES technology. So why are we here at this panel? Is because we feel as a technology company, there's room for technology in education. Education traditionally compared to how fast the market moves, how fast my customers move, is kind of much slower, and we're trying to start a revolution that we'll talk about in getting the latest and newest technologies into the classrooms.
And Bill?
Yes, so my name is, you guys hear me? Is Bill Reeders. I'm Executive Vice President at Cengage Learning. We are one of the largest publishers in the world, and we're focused on teaching, learning, and research globally. The channels that we serve include the academic channel, post-secondary, professionals, and libraries around the world. We are one of the leaders in digital innovation, and in doing that, we really are focusing around things like a lot that we've talked about today around outcomes, around improving student engagement, around fostering academic excellence, and so forth. You know, the reason that we're here at this conference today is that we're really at the forefront of leading the shift from print to digital, and there's obviously a lot of very interesting both hardware, applications, software, use cases here, which make it a very interesting conference. Thanks, Casey.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Felice.
Good afternoon. I'm Felice Noodleman, Executive Director of Education for the New York Times Company. And the New York Times Company has had a long history of collaborating with teachers and with educators and in the education space. Over the past few years, we've actually increased our involvement in education. Most recently, within the past 3 years, we became a majority owner of an e-learning platform that we see as the next generation of technology, fully immersive, fully engaging, web-centered, and really about the student and the learner. And I'll speak more on that a bit later. We also have online courses and work in collaboration with universities on the development of online certificates, courses, programs, and soon-to-come degrees. And we really see this as an outgrowth of our collaboration that we've had for a long time with both K-12 and HigherEd. We also have a digital content repository that goes back to 1851, of our own content and of other content providers that is distributed directly into the learning environment and enables teachers and students to interact directly with content and save that content to their own libraries.
Great. Felice, I'm looking at the rules that I received from the program directors. You are allowed to mention the name of the platform if you'd like, or you can do that later.
Okay, great.
Do you want to do that now, or
Sure.
do you want to do that later?
So the platform is Epsilon,
Okay.
E-P-S-I-L-E-N.
We'll just take the mystery out of that. You don't have to wait for the next round of questions. Sean.
My name's Sean Devine. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of CourseSmart. CourseSmart is a company that is supported and owned by higher education publishers. And our mission is to improve access to education by connecting content producers, digital content producers, with digital content consumers, students and faculty members, in the digital space within higher education. In fact, in the spirit of full disclosure, we are supported by Cengage Learning, and Bill Readers is on my board.
Don't say anything wrong, Sean.
Yeah, so I'm not allowed to say anything wrong while I'm up here. Prior to the existence of CourseSmart, it was extremely difficult for a faculty member or for a student to get access to digital content in higher education. For a faculty member who wanted to use digital content, they might have to go to a number of different publisher websites to try and find the content and then get access to the content to either evaluate it for adoption or then use it in class. A student had really a much tougher row to hoe. If a student wanted to buy an e-textbook, for example, they might have to go to a number of different places to try and find that e-textbook, and if it even existed, then buy it. CourseSmart has 20,000 items in its catalog that come from higher education publishers. The predominant number of those are e-textbooks, but we have a wide array of other types of products. And so we've been able to make it easier for faculty members and students to gain access to this content because they have one place to go to get it on a single platform. And the platform's called CourseSmart.
Great. All right. My thanks to all of you. Bill, I'm going to begin our conversation with you, but it's not going to be limited to you. And we are now at what I think is fair to say sort of the fourth decade, depending on how you count, of the so-called computer or technology revolution in education, and particularly higher education. We've had lots of great aspirations and great expectations about this so-called revolution. And yet, there's a sense that many of us have, who have been part of it, and those of us with gray and thinning hair who've been in the midst of it or watching it, about how much distance we have actually traveled in this process. And with that, a sense as well from off-campus audiences, for all the money that's gone into technology, the thing that we hear from members of the state legislature, we have given you all this money for technology. The accused statement is, why aren't test scores up? So let me begin with you, Bill, and then we'll go to the other panel members. How far have we come, and what factors have impeded our efforts to go a longer distance?
So I think the punchline here, as I think about it, is that we've come a fairly long way, but I think the most impactful part of what we can do with technology and education has just barely begun. And as I think about, sort of the first part of your question, Casey, around how far we've come, I mean, there's no question that a lot has happened. If you look at things like the penetration of distance learning, I mean, that has grown 10 to 15% per year for, well over 10 years, which is a trend that in most industries you don't see trends that last that long. The LMS is nearly ubiquitous across every institution. You've seen the beginnings of the increase in things like assessment and e-books and tablets and, the myriad of devices that are being used. So I think, in terms of how far we've come, I think technology has been applied to higher education. But with that said, I think that we've really just barely begun to scratch the surface on affecting the most important part of it, which is learning. And as I think about where technology goes from here, it needs to focus on learning, and it needs to focus on learning at scale. There's been many efforts where there's been point solutions or there's been pilots that have had tremendous impact, but on a very, very small population or a small cohort. And at Cengage, as we think about how can we really move the dial and affect learning, one of both the opportunities and the challenges to think about how do you do this at scale? How do you affect hundreds of thousands of students at a time and really focus on an improvement in the learning side of it? In terms of the last part of the question, which was what are the barriers to that have impeded progress, I think one of them is that the reality is there is this balance between scale and choice. This is, I believe, an industry, we believe an industry where choice matters, and it's going to matter for the next decade. There's not one way to teach students. There's not one flavor of student. And as technology providers, companies